Hi everyone, my name's Emily Cook, and today I'll be presenting on whether collision sports like the NFL should be considered morally unacceptable. I'm going to start on sports ethics with a focus on Pam Saylor's influential 2015 article, which is known as Personal Foul, and evolution of the moral status of football. The key question that I'm going to be addressing in my presentation is what are the valid ethical arguments for and against banning the NFL and similar sports? So, why is this such a pressing ethical issue? American football, like rugby and other collision sports, is very popular, but it's also associated with significant risks: concussions, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as CTE, long-term musculoskeletal injuries, and even premature death, Kerr et al. 2017 and Gawlowski et al. 2007. At the same time, millions of people, especially in the US, see the NFL as central to their culture, identity, and even a sense of community. Oriad 2017. At the same time, Pam Saylor's 2015 takes a bold stance calling American football morally unacceptable because of the unavoidable harm it causes. But as with the most ethical debates, there are strong arguments on both sides. That's what I'm going to be unpacking today in my presentation. I'll start with the history of the sport, when the current legal and regulatory context in Australia, and finally I'll apply different ethical theories to show both the arguments for and against banning collision sports. So, the historical background: football has been controversial since its early days. In the early 1900s, more than 18 deaths in a single season pushed US President Theodore Roosevelt to demand reforms, said Smith 2011. Those reforms didn't remove risk, they just reduced immediate fatalities. Over time, improved helmets, pads, and concussion protocols have helped, but studies consistently show football players face far higher risks of traumatic brain injury and neurodegenerative diseases than the general population, as Mes et al. 2017 shows. So, while the sport has a strong cultural tradition, it's always carried moral baggage about player safety. So, the current legal regulatory context in Australia: while we don't have the NFL, we do have high contact sports like rugby league, rugby union, and the AFL. Legally, players are covered under workplace health and safety regulations, but participation is largely framed around assumption of risk, meaning athletes consent to play knowing the dangers. Anderson and McName 2019. Regulators like the NRL and AFL have concussion protocols, such as return to play rules and minimum medical standards, sorry. But unlike in the US, there's less litigation. For example, class actions in the US against the NFL for concussion-related conditions have cost the league over $1 billion US dollars in settlements. Goldberg and Ringer 2018, while Australian leagues have only recently begun facing similar legal pressures, Fitzgerald 2021. So in Australia, regulations in reactive and largely focused on minimizing harm rather than questioning the moral acceptability of the sport itself. So to analyze and debate, we do need to incorporate the ethical theory. Utilitarianism: does the overall happiness from the sport outweigh the harm? Deontology: are players being used as means to end, such as profit, entertainment, rather than respected as autonomous individuals? Virtue ethics: does the sport promote admirable character traits like courage, or does it encourage recklessness and violence? Rights-based ethics is: do athletes have the right to risk their health for freedom of choice? And do fans have the right to watch it? These frameworks will help me fairly consider both sides. So Arguments for banning the NFL, which is Saylor's position. Pam Saylor's 2015 argues that football is morally unacceptable. Her reasonings for this is one, unavoidable harm, which is the sport inherently causes brain damage, even with the best rules and equipment. Studies show repeated subconcussive hits can lead to CTEs, MES ETR 2017. Number two, exploitation of athletes. Many NFL players have come from disadvantaged backgrounds. They may feel pressured into playing because of economic incentives, which raises ethical concerns about genuine consent. Saylor's 2015, Anderson and White 2017. The ontological argument. The league profits from athletes' suffering, treating them as a means to an end. That violates campaign principles of respecting human dignity. And finally, number four, public health cost. Long-term injuries lead to enormous medical and social costs, Miller 2018. From this perspective, banning or radically changing collision sports would prevent systematic harm. So, arguments against banning NFL, which in this sense is our counterposition. On the other side, many argue banning football would be ethically wrong. Number one, for this reason, is autonomy and freedom of choice. Athletes knowingly accept the risks, as Anderson and McNean 2019 argue. Banning the sport denies them their right to self-determination. Number two, ulterior joy. Millions of fans gain meaning and happiness and community from football. Research shows fandom contributes to social identity and well-being, 1 ETL 2015. And three, character development. Virtue ethicist claims sports like football build resilience, teamwork, and courage, stated by Russell 2007. And lastly, on the counterposition is improvements through reform. Instead of banning, we can make it safer with better technology and stricter protocols. So while risks are undeniable, banning the sport could remove significant social goods. Here's where it does get a bit complicated. Ethical analysis that altruism is split. The happiness of fans and communities is massive, but the suffering of players is also severe and lifelong. Deontology is strongly favours banning. It's hard to justify using players as a means to entertainment. Virtue ethics depends on interpretation. Is football courage or is it recklessness? Rights ethics. Support both sides, yes. Players have the right to choose, but society also has the duty to protect an individual from preventable harm. This is why Saylor's claim that football is morally unacceptable is controversial. The theories don't all line up neatly. That's the issue. So, table of ethical arguments that I've provided will be in the next slide. The fours for banning the NFL are inherent unavoidable harm, CTE brain injuries, for example, exploitation of vulnerable athletes, players treated as means to profit, and high public health and economic cost. The against banning for the NFL are freedom of choice and autonomy, social and cultural value to millions, builds teamwork, resilience, courage, and reforms and safety improvements are possible. This summary highlights that both sides rely on valid ethical reasoning. So, for conclusion, where do I stand? After reviewing the evidence, I believe Saylor's 2015 raises compelling points, especially about exploitation and unavoidable harm. However, an outright ban might be impractical and culturally diverse. A more ethical approach would be radical reform, where leagues invest in genuine safety measures, restrict contact at younger levels, and ensure informed consent is truly informed, not driven by desperation. Ultimately, this balances respect for autonomy with protection from preventable harm, aligning best with both ulterior and deontological concerns. This is my reference list, and thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.